Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Portress, and joining me today after watching this movie, he started researching suspenders. Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
If I could pull off suspenders like these two gentlemen, you absolutely are right, but I know I never could.
It's a tough one. And he volunteered to sit on Sean's shoulders while he does squats, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and they stole my best dance moves.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This week, our Patreon supporters have voted, and let me tell you, they voted on an interesting one this month. We'll get into all of that in a couple of seconds here, but before we do want to say a big giant thank you to those people over at patreon.com/HMP, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. You know the deal. You get all of that kind of good stuff. And the best part is you also get to vote on everything that we watch, and this month, we had Red Sonja, R.I.P.D., Red 2, Ratfink a Boo Boo. This is the R selection category. But one out at a very, very handed victory here was RRR, which is today's movie, Rise, Roar, and Revolt. Rise, Roar, Revolt, RRR. It is currently available in Hindi on Netflix, which is not the original what's the word I'm looking for? Language. I'm like, you think I would know the word language, but I do not apparently. And that's funny, when I was talking to the guys at work who had seen this before, and they were just like, no, that's the Hindi version. You can't watch that one. Don't watch it. I'm like, bro, I don't know. I don't know the difference between Telugu and Hindi. I don't think that I'm really going to be at that much of a disadvantage.
Once we get into the review, I'm going to go into why it matters, but we'll get there.
All right, we'll get there. All right, it's cool. But before, so that's what we're going to be covering today. So if you want to be like one of those fine people, head on over to patreon.com/HMP, and you can be like our boy Larry. So Larry Trujillo, he wrote in last week. I thought Larry, he wrote in so many times. He's reviewed on like iTunes, I think, and all this other stuff. Larry's been a part of the show for a while. So him finally coming in and at that $20 level, thank you very much, Larry. And we never got him an official HMP nickname, so we're going to rectify that this week. Sean, what do we got?
Okay, how do you pronounce his last name?
I believe, and Larry's probably going to, punch me in the throat for this, and I can't say that I would blame him. I'm going to say Trujillo.
Trujillo.
How's it spelled, Adam? And I'll
Trujillo.
Trujillo.
Okay, so I shall do my best. Well, Larry Trujillo, as is my want to do with nicknames currently, is that I like to do a little bit of research, and this one is a good one. So, looking around at famous Larry Trujillos, the most interesting story is that there was a Denver, Colorado fire chief. And then in 2007, he asked for early retirement due to injury on the job. So he gets it. But then in 2010, he gets appointed the head of Colorado's Homeland Security. And so, like he's kind of a big wheel down at the cracker factory, this guy. Well, it turns out that Larry Trujillo's daughter was in the movie theater when that dude in Aurora, Colorado tried to ruin superhero movies for everyone by shooting a bunch of people.
My.
Yeah. And for anyone listening to this, if you have trouble remembering this guy, his mugshot makes him look like Dollar General Joker.
Yeah.
Like a really bad version of Joker. And it turns out that Larry Trujillo's daughter escaped the shooting unharmed. But here's the interesting part, is that you can't get three nerds to agree on anything, but every single one of us will agree that dude needs to get shut down. The dude who tried to ruin superhero movies for everybody. Everybody agrees, like, let's throw that guy in Arkham. Yeah. Let's throw him in Dollar General Arkham. And I bring all of this up. The reason why I started this from the beginning, and there's a lot of like weirdness happening with this nickname. Mm-hmm. But here's why I wanted to use this one, because if there is one person you do not want to get on the bad side of if you live in Colorado, it's the guy who runs the Homeland Security in Colorado.
Yes.
And so in that spirit, Larry Trujillo, your HMP nickname is now F around and find out.
I love that. That is awesome.
So congratulations, Larry. You're the newest member of HMP, and thank you.
And if you would like to get your own HMP nickname and all the other fine stuff, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join up at any level today. Just remember, if we disappear, what would you do to get the show back? Just plop that down in a number form, send it off to us. We love you guys very, very much. That is it for the Patreon. Let's get into it. I don't have a trailer, so you know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
This is the most interesting part because at the end of the day, we chose this not knowing any sort of idea for comic connection or Stallone connection or anything. So this is going to be quite an interesting one, Sean. Or Bruce, what do you got for us?
Chitrakatha.
Hey, watch your mouth. This is a family show.
Chitrakatha are Indian comics and graphic novels. And you may not know this, but India is a big place. And therefore, it has more than one language. Thus, the comics are also in multiple languages like Hindi and Telugu, just to name a couple. Now, in fact, India has a long tradition of comic readership and themes associated with extensive mythology and folktales that have appeared as children's comic books for decades. But much like the U.S., the comic industry was at its peak in the late 80s and early 90s. And during this period, popular comics sold more than 500 copies in India over the course of its shelf life, which was about several weeks. Now, currently, comics in India only sell about 10% of that, about 50,000 copies over a similar period. But that's still a lot of comics. But India's comic industry began in the mid-1960s when the leading newspaper, the Times of India, launched Indrajal Comics. And the evolution of Indian comics can be broadly divided into many phases. Around the 1950s saw syndicated strips like The Phantom, Mandrake, Flash Gordon, Rip Kirby. Well, they were all being translated to Indian languages. And the success of these comic books was followed by a swarm of publishers trying to emulate these titles. Now, the second phase in the 1960s came in the form of Amar Chitrakatha, which is literally translated as Immortal Picture Stories. And these were comics with 100% Indian content. And in the 1970s, several indigenous comics were launched to rival the Western superhero comics. One of India's earliest superheroes is Batul the Great, and it was created by Narayan Debnath, and it was inspired by the famous comics character Desperate Dan, who was drawn by Dudley D. Watkins. But when the Bangladesh War of Liberation, which was also known as the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, flared up, well, he was asked by the editors and publishers to add an aura of invincibility to Batul the Great. So Debnath was reluctant at first because he was worried about some legal implications. But on assurances from his lawyers, he made Batul a superhero. Bullets began to bounce off of him, much like Superman. He also had a great appetite, and sometimes he ate a whole whale for breakfast. That's quite the breakfast. And also sometimes his amazing strength would be the cause of his downfall. Like when he was trying to operate machinery, he would usually break it. Also, it would show him sometimes in the comics trying to ride a bull in a rodeo, like this would happen more than once. But because he was so dense, his weight would cause the legs of the bull to get embedded in the ground. But he was also a detective like Batman. Now, from 2005 to the more recent times, there's been a lot of attempts where some new comic publishers as well as old comic publishers tried to both revive Indian comics and create new ones, but they haven't had much success. But the comics from large companies like Marvel, DC, and Image, well, they're almost instantly available, being translated into nearly any language. So it's been much more difficult for regional comics to get a foothold. And of course, manga factors into that equation as well. But when you have 1 billion potential readers, it just can't hurt to try. And speaking of potential readers, Adam.
That was pretty good, man.
I like that. Well, if that comic connection didn't get you excited, let me sell everybody on this giant Bollywood hit that is kind of taking the world by storm.
Not Bollywood, please. You're going to get letters.
I'm sorry.
Bollywood. Hollywood with the D. Or Dollywood with the D works.
Oh, okay. Our favorite Dollywood movie. This sucker's got everything. We got the story, the fire, the water, fantastic mustaches, accidental child selling, 1 versus 1,000 fight, heavy bag busting, wolf chase that turns into a tiger fight. We got foamers, get ready for a hot exploding train action. We got smoke on the water, tug of war, meet cute vandalism, good old fashioned dance offs. We got finger snapping, leg beating, head smashing, neck biting, snake throwing, snake biting, throat ripping, leopard tossing, motorcycle swinging. Let's see, chain beating, antler stabbing, fountain smashing, carriage fire flip, car flipping, shoulder riding, tree stabbing, water versus firefight, whips, spiked whips, a little game of blow up dad, ground and pound, and the biggest dance number you'll see this year. This movie's got everything.
I love the dance numbers.
Of course
I did
you
too,
do.
man. I did too, and I didn't expect to. I love them.
So let's just go ahead and address like Bollywood versus this movie. Bollywood, and I didn't know this before I watched this movie. This isn't something that, like, I'm not trying to say we'll actually hear.
Westerners don't really know a lot of this stuff. We just don't because we're not exposed to it. It is what it is.
I thought Bollywood was like any Indian movie, more or less. It's just like any American movie, you can call it Hollywood. But that's not true. Bollywood is specifically Hindi cinema, and this movie was Telugu. Like, I thought it was Tamil at first, but it's actually Telugu. So the T is Tollywood, and then, of course, Dollywood is any movie made in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So that's how you tell the three apart. But this is Tollywood, not Bollywood, but please forgive us, because if it sounds like we're saying Bollywood, that's because your ears aren't working. We're really saying Bollywood.
The problem is that you have cheap headphones and you need to upgrade your headphones. Raycon.com. No, I'm not a Raycon people. Don't you dare put that crap in there. They didn't pay me for nothing. So I think all of us going into this knew nothing. Would I be correct in that assumption?
I knew nothing about this movie. I wouldn't say I knew nothing in general.
Well, you can't. Yes, you knew something, I'm sure, but about this movie, you are correct in that.
You can't take that away from Bruce. He knows stuff.
I got a few things. Shut up.
I will say this is that it came on my radar because of Patrick H. Williams. And I knew that he was like a massive champion of this movie. He's seen it many times in the theater. Mm-hmm. And he kept raving and ranting about it. I don't watch his YouTube channel, and I usually don't. But he comes on my radar from time to time. Like, you know, I listen to Dave Chen stuff, and he showed up on Dave Chen's show, and so I was like, oh well, all right, well let's listen to this for a bit. And so I listened to them talk about it for a bit, and then I stopped listening because, you know, they started getting into like the nitty gritty of the show, and I was like, I want to see this movie. It's on Netflix. I'll end up watching it. And so for the fact that it ended up being, you know, for the show bully for me, that, you know, I get to watch the movie out of joy, and because the good folk, the good HMPers were like, hey, let's hear what you think of this movie. I got to tell you, 20 minutes into this movie, I was like, man, like I'm not feeling this at all.
Really?
But, like, for the first 20 minutes or so, like, it took me a while to warm up to it. But once I was on board, I was absolutely 100% fully on board with this.
Because I was on board the very moment that Ram jumped over the fence with his billy club and went and got that guy and pulled him back in. Like when I saw that fighting, I was like, okay, this is the kind of ridiculous, impossible action I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. So I think that was in the first 20 minutes. Like,
it definitely is. Yes. Yeah. Because that's the fire part. Fire.
Yeah.
I think it was when we got to water that I really was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, once it starts rolling and everything. But I'd mentioned kind of previously on maybe other shows or in a Dinger Zone or something. I don't know when I talk about things. I say things a lot. But we'd played RRR at our theater, and like we'll occasionally get some Indian films every now and then. Some do well, some don't do. It all kind of, you know, it's a grab bag. At least at our theater, there's other theaters where they do a lot more Indian content and do far more successful. So they kind of keep them over at those theaters because that's where that audience is. Yeah. But we put out RRR. We had it in both sets of language and everything. And people came. It was quite shocking, and like we had a decent number of shows and stuff, and like there'd always be like 15, 20 plus people in there for each one. And so we had two of our servers. They were like, yo, we're getting off early and we're watching RRR. It's going to be a laugh, you know? And it turns out there were other people in there. So they, you know, went about the nice, respectful way and were like, we'll just watch this movie. And they got out of it and I was like, well, how'd you like your 3-hour Indian film? And they were like, bro, this movie's insane. And I'm like, and these are guys that are like 25. So I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why? And they saw it like 3 or 4 times in the theater. Like one of them had his mom like go to the mall and make him an RRR shirt because he couldn't find one anywhere, for crying out loud.
That is absurd.
I'm telling you, like I was just like, you've got to be kidding me, right? But no, they absolutely loved it. So when this came up, I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. And boy, am I glad that we did, because it's bananas.
The first I heard about it was from you, Adam. So you were telling me, I guess, about your shop and how things were going there. So that was the first I heard of it. But I have seen trailers for some ridiculous, over the top movies that I, in retrospect, after doing some research, were kind of from this filmmaking group. Mm-hmm. Like the guy that plays Rom has been the lead in some of that stuff, and the same director. So there's other stuff out there that from the trailers looks more over the top than this. Like I was expecting this to be kind of like the Indian version of the Russian Avengers, but they actually have a legitimate story to tell.
Yeah.
So it kind of won me over unexpectedly, but at the same time, like it lost me first because I wanted like the scene where the guy goes to the party, and we're going to tell this out of order, but the scene where because this thing's so long, but the scene where the guy goes to the party and unleashes all the wild animals, like,
oh my God, man, it's amazing.
I wanted that to be the movie all the way through, and it's not. But the stuff that's in here, I liked better than I ever would have thought. Also, I'm going to say, this is the kind of movie you can't spoil. I'm just going to say, I could tell somebody how this ends. These are historical figures, so you know a little bit about what has to happen in their real lives.
Kind of, because from my understanding, and again, this is a little out of school from just like the light reading that I've done, is that like while these two characters existed in real life, they never actually met in real life.
Yes.
And they mentioned that kind of at the front, which that whole thing at the front where it's just like, here's all of the kind of preface about this. I call that the shut up Whitey page.
Yeah. but I mean, it's like if you went to see a movie where George Washington and Thomas Jefferson fought werewolves, like, you know that they're not going to die in the movie and they're going to be victorious. So that's what I mean. It's like, I don't think you can spoil this movie by saying a lot of what happens, because it's like, you can't spoil a song by telling people the lyrics to that song. You got to hear the song.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is like a song, like both literally and figuratively, but like, there's like, I've never necessarily been a sucker for the big musical productions in Indian films, but I also haven't watched very many Indian films start to finish, like maybe none start to finish, other than like there was a Pride and Prejudice remake I liked. But watching this, man, the musical numbers are, like, as a person who enjoys musical theater, they are above and beyond what you get in Western cinema's musical theater. Like, it's better than anything you're going to get in that Into the Woods with Johnny Depp that was made a few years back.
Now, but like, imagine you watched like, you know, like The Bourne Identity, but at the end there was a giant dance number.
No, it a third of the way through the movie.
You're right. There's a couple.
Yeah, there's a couple, and
I mean, I would say the best musical number in this whole movie is the dance off. Like, I wish more geopolitical disagreements were solved by dance off.
Our geopolitical dance off has begun.
It's a wonderful scene. I gotta say, these are the two things. These are my two takeaways from this movie. One is that if I am an Indian kid, this is my favorite movie, and there's no way it can't be. I mean, it's you know, it's so filled with love for the country and for its own history, and it's just wonderful. I mean, even just being an American watching this movie, I'm like, boy, this is great. So I can't even imagine being a little kid and watching this movie. how wonderful that must feel.
The two leads are so likable.
They are, and I gotta say
they are.
And I gotta say, the guy playing Rom is probably one of the most handsome men in the world. He is insanely handsome.
Yeah,
he's also probably the biggest star in India. Just put it in perspective. He's
Nope. You still there?
Is he gonna have Is he gonna fill his face with fillers later when he gets in his 50s?
I don't know.
His head just gets bigger and bigger as he gets older.
I'd rather see him as an Eternal than Kamal Nanjiani. I'll just say that.
Well, I mean, come on, come on. That's unfair to both men.
Yeah, it's just like,
this guy's awesome though. I mean,
he is. He's amazing. He's amazing. And you know, the other thing about the other thing that I take away from this movie is that it's something, they have something in this movie that we never see in American movies, which is just absolute like platonic love between people. These two men,
male friendship and vulnerability that you don't see in the US because we're so like afraid of male friendship here.
Right. And you know, and it's so genuine, and they're so in love with each other, and it's just so fun to watch. Like these two dudes just really love each other, and that is awesome.
Yeah, it just becomes this like we didn't know, and then best friend story, and then turns into like enemies, but then like triple cross again. We're going back over the other direction, and it keeps you on your toes. And at first, like when we had a little bit of the flashback stuff to the younger ages, at first I was just like, oh, I don't know if I like the way that they're telling this story. Like maybe I would have liked that earlier, but no, it actually works far better with the way that they've kind of, you know, staged those flashbacks and stuff as well.
And it has the most un-American thing ever, which is admitting you were wrong.
Yes.
Because the guy's like, I wanted to save one little girl, and he wanted to save a nation. And now it's like I was with all this, and how he I love the idea that he suffered great pain and damage to save his friend from execution, and then the other guy came back and repay it. I mean, it's over.
Of course.
It is like Rambo. Yeah. It's Rambo level on realism, but I love the story they're telling. And also, so I mentioned that the guy who plays Ram is like the biggest action star in India, but the other guy that plays Beam, he was the host of the Telugu language Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So he's like the Regis Philbin of Southern India.
And let me tell you,
he's way more jacked than Regis Philbin.
But I don't think he was jacked until he made this movie. That's
I don't know about that. I'm not even joking around. Have you seen a shirtless Regis Philbin? God rest his soul.
He's pretty jacked,
bro. Look it up. Look it up. Look up
Adam,
Regis Philbin without a shirt. You're gonna be like,
Adam,
say what now?
The funniest, weirdest hill to die on, and I'm here for you.
I'm not saying it's not strange, but like all of a sudden it was like 90-something years old, and there's like a picture of him with his shirt off, and you're like, what in the sweet? Is this photoshopped? No, it's real.
Everyone has seen Slumdog Millionaire, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the Hindi version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So the Telugu version had this guy that plays Beam, and from what I understand, it's like it didn't even exist until after Slumdog Millionaire made that show like the most popular game show in India.
Oh, wow.
So cool. Danny Boyle, victory for you.
I didn't.
Adam can't even admit that creating a game show frenzy was a victory.
I don't like. I don't, of Danny Boyle's work, I don't care for that. It's like it's not a bad movie, but it's like all right. It's okay.
I think you're clearly anti-Indian.
It must be. It must be because I'm just actually. All right, anyway, that's too long of a subject.
How do you feel about that movie with the tiger in a boat, Richard Parker?
I never saw it. I never saw the what Life of Pi. I never saw that.
You just proved my point. Okay, next point. Come on, John.
But I saw the Hulk. Ang Lee's the Hulk. That's got.
Yeah, that's the same
basic premise. Yeah, it's the same director. It counts.
Your proclivities aside, let me just say, Life of Pi is a tremendous movie. Slumdog Millionaire, it might not be your cup of tea.
It's not bad. It's just okay.
I like the storytelling device behind that movie. I like that. I thought it was neat.
So, would it be the most Hollywood thing ever if they said this movie is so popular it needs an Oscar nomination, and the only nomination they gave it was Ray Stevenson as Best Supporting Actor.
Oh my gosh! Which, by the way, I like Ray Stevenson as an actor, and this ain't doing it.
Man.
I'll tell you, Allison Doody, man.
Oh, my Lord.
Doody has so much bad plastic surgery.
Oh, my God,
I
man.
thought she was an Indian actress trying to look English at first when
She literally looks like the women on all of those reality television shows. That's how bad the plastic surgery is.
Yeah, and I did a little bit of research, and in 1920 India, they did not have that kind of plastic surgery available. So terrible casting.
What?
Name your source?
Wiki/India/Pedia/Adam will never read this.
Couple of question marks, little ampersand somewhere. I'm sure that's how those things always tend to work.
It's
I did
it's
like
so
the
bad.
idea
It's so bad. Like that lady was such a lovely woman, and to look like an old angry cat like she does now. It's so sad.
Not to mention how they just made her the pure devil, like even worse.
Oh
like,
my
even
God.
worse than the husband. It dwells into some weird kind of like almost allegations of misogyny because she just happens to below her chair at all times have a whip with nails in it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, like, so he's out there getting publicly flogged, and she's angry because it's not bloody enough. And you're like, what's going on? Reaches in, has that whip, and that whip looks brutal. And I love great stories to stuff here where they go, all right, I'll tell you what, just because we want to show everybody, whip that post real quick so it'll show what it's going to do to wood, and think about what that's going to do to a person. Now we're going to do it, and he's going to sing a song while you're doing it, and we're going to free this nation. Yeah. And you're like, what's going on? I love it.
And it's like, I can understand Ray Stevenson's character of Governor Scott because it's your job to kind of do that. But this is like if your plumber comes to like unclog your toilet and his wife's saying, I wanted to see more turds. Get more turds out of that toilet. Like, it's kind of weird to have the wife there trying to help you do the job.
Feel like you're not murdering people a whole enough. Come on, try harder.
And I got to tell you, I'm of English heritage, so I've learned a lot about English history over the past 400 to 500 years. I had no idea they were bad people.
That was one of the.
Have you not seen a Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
I'm just thinking of Bobby Hill when Chief Redcorn was telling him how white people saw that land. He says, I'm a white person, and this is the first I'm hearing of it, so I don't know if that's true.
That was one of the things that the guys at work said when they came out. They were just like, well, I'll tell you this, don't look good for British people in this movie.
Could you imagine being like the one British, or not even British, English? Let's not bring Scotland and Wales into this. So imagine being the one like English couple sitting in a theater surrounded by like Indian moviegoers, and this movie's going on, and you're like giving that uncomfortable cough and wondering, like, should we act like we're going to the bathroom and just run for the parking lot?
I could be wrong, but I think this is one of those things that we were all kind of talking about, is that this actually made some decent money over there, and that was what was kind of surprising to people because they are really the villains.
It's like saying Fast and Furious made money in the U.S. because it has non-white people in it. I mean, you know, the UK has a sizable population of people from Southern Asia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing that fact. I'm just saying it made money. Somebody's watching it.
Which happens when people buy tickets.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I can't remember what I was going to say.
I'll say it.
Let's talk about the dance-off, man. The dance-off is the best scene in the whole movie.
Yes, without a doubt.
And I went out in my backyard. I'm not lying. I went out in my backyard. I loaded up YouTube on the phone. I got this big Bluetooth speaker. I played the Natu Natu song and tried to do it, and I hurt my knee. So I can't do this. I cannot do this dance.
You would have lost. You would have lost.
Yeah. It's not as easy as you think it is.
I didn't think it was easy to begin with.
But
neither did I, and it's even harder.
What a great little storytelling moment there. Because, like,
Yeah.
he's obviously, like, the more accomplished of the two and everything. And he looks in his best friend's eyes and he's just like, I got to give him this one. And, like, it
I gotta
just
take a dive.
and drops out. And, like, it's such a sweet moment because he's trying to impress this lady and everything and he's dancing his tail off. It's so sweet.
It's another thing that this movie does right is that it is so sweet.
And it's how you can tell Rom is the bigger star because in every competition, he's doing better. The only time Beam can win is when he lets him win. And like even in the dance off, there's one girl cheering for Beam and everybody else is cheering for Rom. And you can just feel the Tom Cruise of India coming out of that actor.
Yes, he certainly can.
You look at him, and that's what you think, and like because he's running all over the place. That shirt pops off, and you're like, "Good gravy! Look at this guy."
Yep.
And he's got the mustache everybody envies.
Oh, what a beautiful mustache! And he goes through a lot of different facial hair forms on there, so you get to just see him in all kinds of handsome form. You're like, my word, this is just. I don't know how the rest of the people in India do it. We got to compare up against this cat. It's like every dude's Ryan Reynolds. No, thank you.
Man, that is a lot to live up to.
So I counted, and this 3-hour movie has 6 acts.
That sounds about right.
I'm not exaggerating here. It has a first act, 3 second acts, 2 third acts, 6 acts total.
The thing that I noticed with the actor playing Rom is that in all the dance sequences you can see the training coming out because they clearly are both dancers first, and so like all the dance training is coming out with Rom because he is always smiling when he's dancing.
He's got that good moves, that like turning it on, kind of smiling at you while you're doing it. It's just like, oh no, this was his first home right here,
right? And you can and it's so obvious and clear and just fun to watch because these two men are enjoying themselves, like they're enjoying doing these scenes. Like I think that when being an American watching American movies, whenever it comes to dance sequences, there's a whole lot of like, well, let's see. Jesus, let's see if Russell Crowe can hit that note. You know, there's a whole lot of that happening in our movies. Meanwhile, these guys are like, you know, oh, no, I did this first. This is what got me in the business in the first place, like that kind of thing. And it's so fun to watch for that reason alone.
There's a part of me watching this movie that thinks like the next move for Hugh Jackman is going to be Indian cinema because he is built to be in Indian cinema.
I think it's unfortunate that he's, you know, an elder statesman these days because he could totally clean
singing
up.
and dancing and punching his way through everybody. Heck yeah,
man. He's got as much charm as these guys do too. I mean, he's charming.
I did look up a little like behind the scenes on Indian filmmaking because they have these elaborate 15-minute dance scenes where people just are going all out. Mm-hmm. And part of the secret is they film them like 3 minutes at a time and string it all together. And when you watch it, you can see the cuts frequently enough that it's like you go out there and you kick that leg as hard as you can for 3 minutes. And then you go like have a coffee and relax for an hour, and we're going to do another 3 minutes. But that is how they get this done because no human alive can keep that up for 15 minutes.
No way. I mean, just the shoulder rolling alone that they're doing in that, you are going to hurt something if you do that enough.
Something's coming out of socket.
I do love how they weaponize their suspenders for the dance contest.
That is great.
Because like the English lady grabs him and pulls him and lets him go. And then they are like, okay, this is part of the act now. I mean, that Desi Notch dance scene, the Natu Natu dance scene, that thing is so amazing. And there's a couple of other musical numbers and there is a couple of massive action numbers. But that dance number is what I think like 100 million people are going to remember from this movie.
Without a doubt, man. It's the best part of the movie. I do have to say this about the movie. I have not been so good of friends with someone that after they whipped me, I was still cool with that person afterward.
Well, hey, you beat me within an inch of my life.
Sean, there's still hope, and I could come to Atlanta.
He's got a lot of free time and some whips on his hands. So
I think you and I are going to have problems if that ends up happening.
But the weird thing is that there's like historical precedent for that. Cause like, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Revenant.
yeah.
In real life, those guys made up and were friends. They didn't like kill each other. So like that in real life, there's a weird thing where like, I don't know if it's the adrenaline or it's just like in the old days, being alive was like winning the lottery. Like you wake up and you're alive. You just won the dadgum lottery.
Did it again.
But that sort of thing did happen, man.
Well, I mean, you also got to think about it this way too. Guys tend to be a lot cooler about that. You can get into a fist fight with your buddy and still, the next day you just be like, hey man, and you're done.
Being tied to a post and whipped with an old cat lady's whip that's got nails in it.
I'm not saying it's not turned up to 11.
In front of everybody too. That's the other part.
Yeah, it's pretty not great.
And I'm going to say there's a scene where a guy wrestles a tiger or whatever. Like there's a scene where a guy outruns a wolf. There's a scene where a guy hits a bullseye with a rifle from like 700 yards. The most unrealistic thing to me is when the whip hits him with the nail and he just like slowly pulls it across his chest. It looks kind of like a carpet burn.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's tough to do, and my guess is that they're probably not allowed to go all Passion of the Christ on this bad boy. So, but I say that, but there's also some moments in here where you're like, whoa, well, they're doing that. That guy's getting his throat chewed out. Okay,
yeah, there's like a lot of gun violence, and I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, I got a friend whose kids. Should I recommend that he lets them watch this or not? Because I think they'd love it, but there's a lot of gun violence. Like it's weird because it walks this line where it's like old school G-rated movie where if the blood didn't splatter, you could shoot people in the head. And here the blood doesn't quite splatter, but it's there.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. And look at the movie itself too. And this goes for a lot of Indian films as well. Pretty much zero romance in this. No,
Yes.
no real. I mean,
The thing that, Sita, there's the whole fiance thing, but it's like an Indian interpretation of romance and not an American interpretation.
Well, that I guess that's really what I'm kind of more saying is that not the traditional like, hey, at the end, our hero and his lady are gonna embrace and have a big old smooch and everything, and we're gonna show a train going into a tunnel or some such.
But what surprised me is in a movie that's all about the citizens of India rising up against the invaders or the colonizers from England is that there's a love interest between Beam and Jenny, and I would think like in America, if you had like, I'm trying to think of what's the dude that the Swamp Fox, Marion.
Oh, right.
The one that,
yes,
anyway, the
South
one
Carolina. Yeah.
The one from South Carolina that the guy from Australia, Mel Gibson, played in The Patriot. If you had a movie where he was in love with a British woman, it would get a lot of like fundamentalist patriots upset. And they had this where the Indian revolutionary leader Beam, who is like a folk hero, has a love interest who's an English woman. And it's really interesting because he doesn't even speak English, and yet they still find a connection. So that romance angle was something I did not expect.
Me neither. Francis Marion.
Yeah, I was thinking Francis Drake.
I have a friend who worked on that movie.
Yeah, I have a friend who didn't.
All of my friends did work on it, but that's just
interesting.
I don't know. I don't have many friends. I will say that.
One of my friends is,
and everybody's just like that checks out.
But anyway, that part of the romance kind of shocked me. I wasn't expecting that. And they kept rolling with it. Even with the dance contest, he plays into it. It does have one Stan Lee small world moment when Beam is running from the law and he's hiding out and he Sita.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that is very Stan Lee.
Yeah, and that's when he realizes, I was focused on one little girl and this guy's focused on the whole nation. And when it comes to historical relevance, like these guys are roughly the same age, but they led their revolutions 20 years apart. So Beam was much older when he led his revolution, but all the statues that I could find pictures of on Wikipedia of Rom have him with the long hair and the beard. So
Yep.
I was glad at the end they pulled that element in where he went from looking like Ben Kingsley in the first act of Gandhi to look like the statues of this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
mean when he
noticed that
goes
too.
full Rambo mode?
Yeah, and Rom was famous for stealing weapons from the police, but I don't think he was actually a member of the police from what I could deduct. But Beam was really like this tribal war leader in the 40s, so the rebellion had changed its nature quite a bit by World War II time when he was doing his thing.
I always like I like that element of like I'm trying to take stuff down, going from like the inside and all that sort of stuff, and each of these guys, in a sense, having somewhat of a similar goal for things, and not really as friendly as they are. The open communication between them both is not really the best. I guess that's a dude thing. We don't talk to each other enough. But like if
Well,
they'd have
they're
just had a
also both-
conversation.
They're both up to extremely dangerous secret missions too. So
Yeah, they don't want to get the other guy in trouble. There is
Yeah.
a bit of that.
yeah, and they don't want to get themselves in trouble either. I mean, one guy's there to kill the governor, the other guy's there to steal guns.
Wouldn't you think at that one point where he would have been like, oh, yeah, by the way, don't be saluting me on this thing so I get jacked up from these people.
I do love the end when they both turn into Rambo and they're using a bow and arrow and a spear and they go back to the traditional weapons, but then they work a hand grenade a pineapple hand grenade, which did not exist in 1920, but they work that in. And I love that scene where he like uses his fingertip to pull the pin and then launches the grenade. I mean, they got some great moments there when they're fighting the special forces in the woods where nothing is period appropriate. But at this point, I've also seen a guy throw a motorcycle overhead. So
It's true.
I grab a motorcycle, swung it around a couple times, and then with both hands threw it over my head at another man and hit him. Okay, sure. I love it,
Well,
though.
he was really mad.
Yeah.
not as impressive as when he threw it like a leopard at somebody, but still
Oh,
impressive.
yeah, exactly. He threw a leopard like 5 seconds later where it's just like you threw a full animal at somebody.
And I'm no big cat expert, but I don't think leopards live in India. So like they went to Africa, got a leopard, brought it to India just to throw at somebody.
I can't imagine picking up my 88-pound dog to try to throw, much less an entire leopard.
And also, there's like that beginning scene when Beam is still back with the Gone tribe and they're trapping the wolf, and then the tiger comes out there and he like has the wolf and the tiger hit each other. And I thought that was really like foreshadowing in that he was going to have two enemies end up fighting each other to win. That never happened.
No.
But in that moment, I started like doing research on Beam. And not research. I just read who was Beam on Wikipedia, and where he lived.
Hey, Adam Portress calls that research, my friend.
and they kept
I
calling
know
him
that guy.
They kept calling him a Bengal revolutionary. And I started thinking, like, if Washington changed the name of their team from the Redskins, should Cincinnati quit being the Bengals and just be the Tigers?
Oh, Bengal's a specific type of tiger.
Yeah, it's
so-
a type of
But
tiger.
it's also a human.
Well, so is people are bald. We have bald eagles.
If they changed their helmets so they had pictures of Beam on the side, would you be cool with that?
I would not be cool with it.
Because that guy would win any football game. There's no question about it. He can outrun a tiger. He can win a football game.
He's going to use another guy as a projectile. I mean, of
That
course
was
he's
like,
gonna
to
win.
me, that was the scene I think that really kind of, there was other stuff, but that was the one where I was in whole hog being chased by this wolf, which then gets turned into a tiger, and just how they mapped out what he does with the tiger at the end in the net, holding him and like his arm strength and everything, just keeping this tiger away at a pace, and then stuff breaking. It's like they took this action scene and just broke it down to these great elements and everything that made you like. Seriously, comparing this to like Obi-Wan, I am like enthralled in all of these action scenes.
I love it that there was a disclaimer at the beginning that said the tiger was CGI, so nobody thought that that actor actually killed the tiger with his bare hand.
Well, you got to put that at the top.
I did also like, though, at the same time, too, though, like at the end with the dead tiger and everything, he like kind of holds the head, like, very kindly. It was just like, I didn't want this to happen. But,
I'm sorry, my friend. I need this.
like, and I thought that was really great. Again, it shows it's another little level to that character and stuff. But like after that scene, you're like, well, I know who this guy is.
I what did you guys think of all of the imagery of with being with water and Rama with the fire, because it comes up all the time.
I feel like they didn't commit thoroughly enough. I know it comes up a lot, but they'd never really explore it. And I also started thinking about like Avatar. There's a firebender and a waterbender.
Uh-huh.
But I felt like they put it up there, and it kind of makes sense personality wise because, Rom seems to be the more incendiary personality, and the other guy's able to like be calm and watch his time the way water erodes stone.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there was more exploration to happen. And in a 3-hour movie, there was time for that exploration, but they didn't choose to go after it.
Oh, that's interesting, because I thought that they did a great job with that.
One of the interesting things where this might have had at least an interesting viewing experience for you, I don't know if you guys know this, but this also debuted in the United States in 4DX theaters.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
I bet that was a blast. I'm not kidding.
The guys that saw the movie at our theater like didn't get a chance. They really wanted to see it in 4X, but it didn't stay too awful long, because when Top Gun comes around, you got to give up the ghost to Tom Cruise over here.
Of course. Of course.
Indian Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise has to step out for American
American
Tom Cruise, because American Tom Cruise is just stomping it right now. He's continuing to stomp 1 month later and is still selling out more than any other show that we've got. It's unreal. But 4DX is, so when you sit in the seats that move and everything, and you have like the fans and water and everything, I wonder how much, if any, that they incorporated some of that into the actual, fire and waters. They don't have any heat in there, which I think kind of sucks. But then again, you don't want to burn the faces of customers off at the same time, too, I suppose.
I say just bring a blowtorch and roll with it.
They did it at Universal, man, because like when on that Jaws ride,
They had
when like
hair
Jaws
dryers.
goes through
Yeah.
and like a thing blows up and everything, I was on the opposite side of the boat. My face felt like it was going to burn off. So it's not like you don't do it out there. It's possible.
And at Universal too, man. They have that mummy ride where you go through the room with the flames on the ceiling. That's
That's so dope. I love that ride. That was way better than I expected. And we got stuck in the dark on that thing once. It was not fun. Scary.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about like why the Hindi translation version.
Yes,
Please.
Weird thing to watch.
because that's my friends. Like they're like, no, bro, you got to go. This is literally how they're. No, bro, you got to go Telugu on that. It ain't no good in the Hindi. And I'm like,
Yeah,
Well,
well,
first
I
of all, why do
agree.
you know?
Well, I agree that the Telugu version it would have been superior, but there's more Hindi speakers internationally, so that's why Netflix put that one up there.
That's what I figured.
But as a person who watches a lot of Japanese media, you have the sub versus dub debate, and the dub debate is you can listen with your ears, watch with your eyes, and the sub debate, well, you read the subtitles, but you get to hear this original performance. The lips match the words. You hear nuance. So if you love these actors, you're not hearing the voice of these actors you love. So with Hindi, you get the worst of both worlds. Like the lips moving don't match the words, and you still got to read subtitles. Like, and you don't get to hear the nuance in the voice. Like, I still would kind of like to see how it hits differently if you saw the actual Telugu version.
No, I mean, and I wouldn't to check it out, because it is a wild, like, it's going to be a couple of weeks from now. I'm not one of but
I'm a person who can enjoy a sub or a dub, but to have a sub and a dub just is, it drives you crazy.
Luckily for me, I still kind of go on the idea, and this happened a lot in Eastern countries when they had film and everything, of just not even recording dialogue or anything on the set as it was, and then just being.
That was almost 100% Italian, but yeah.
But a lot of other Asian countries did a bit of that as well. So like everybody's kind of done it at one point or another. But as long as I don't I didn't have anything to compare to, so that for me that's why this was okay, because I'm like I don't know the language, I don't know the actors or anything, so it's not like I'm watching whatever and hearing Kermit the Frog's voice or something like that. It doesn't throw me because I don't know this actor's voice or anything, so it could have been worse. I thought ultimately I thought it was fine.
From my understanding, the English dub doesn't exist yet. That's why Netflix doesn't have that. And there is a huge population of Netflix watchers in the U.S. who are Bollywood fans. Like, Bollywood has done a good job of exporting their product to the U.S., so they dub it into Hindi and they get the Bollywood fans to watch it. And Tollywood fans just got to speak up and get stuff to be in Telugu language in the U.S. because, you know, I've seen a couple of ridiculous over-the-top action trailers from the Telugu language movie production stuff. The same director here has made some crazy-looking stuff that you can find trailers on YouTube, and I'd kind of like to watch those movies.
Is it some of those, because I've seen some of these, with, we'll be nice and say questionable CGI?
Yeah, but it's fun. I mean, this movie is
this one's tops compared to some of the other stuff.
This is the most expensive. This is the Titanic of Indian filmmaking. It's the most expensive Indian film ever made at the time it was made, and it was $72 million. So that tells you there's a limit to how much they have for investments. There's a ceiling, so to speak, to what they can spend on CGI. But then you look at that Russian Avengers, and its budget was like $15 million. So, they can do better than that. But yes, some of those are just amazing. They have the same director, the same lead actor, and I kind of want to check those out. And I think that from my very, very, very limited understanding, Bollywood doesn't go into the over-the-top action as much as Tollywood does. So that's why I'm kind of wanting to look into these Tollywood movies now.
Interesting. But yeah, overall, I was so surprised at everything. I will say this, and I know, it comes from a long tradition, again, especially in Eastern countries where when film started, it was kind of your alternative to going to the theater. Going to the theater was a hoity-toity expensive thing and everything because you had to have the actors and everybody to come back all the time. But if you have a film, you can show that that's cheap, and the peasants, as it were, would go to the movies. That was their medium of choice and everything. Yeah. And as such, you don't have a ton of money to spend on movies, and you want that entire movie-going experience because you don't get to go that often, right? So you want an action, you want drama, you want comedy, you want scary stuff, musical numbers, you want all of that stuff, and jam it into, that 3-hour period so you get the most bang for your buck out of there. And they've continued to do that. And it's nice because it's certainly different than anything that, we're doing over here.
And just for a bit of perspective, it's rare that we have our local community theater live performances that are less than 3 hours. So yeah, this really does follow the live musical theater format here, where you got to kind of have a 4-quadrant thing because you got one show per season and then you got to move on.
Well, before we get to our rating here and everything, I do want to read a couple of things because when we put this up on the Patreon here, a couple of our Patreon people had either just watched it because we had, put it up on the list and everything, and they were excited to see it, or had seen it previously. And I want to kind of read a couple of their thoughts on here. So Tom writes in, please do RRR. Just saw it and was streaming tears of joy from my eyes. I would love to hear your take on this once-in-a-lifetime movie event. My greatest regret is not watching this in a theater. Go in cold. Don't watch any previews. We saw it only on the recommendation of the Filmcast. Stop rambling. Please watch it. Justin said, so I just watched RRR, and yes, this is the movie. Didn't expect that's incorrect. We turned Tollywood film to be running for one of my favorite films of the year, but here we are. And Michael said, I saw RRR the other night, and OMG, you guys, you have to watch this. I was praying for a comic book connection, though the Stallone connection is going to be bananas, which brings me to one of the most important parts of our show, is how this movie relates back one-to-one. Good luck with Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Hello, Mr. Stallone. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are hundreds of people who work on films that never step onto the set. post-production these days hire more people than the filming crew needs, and these people are the backbone to your big budget action movies. One of these people is named Dragistin Valev. Now, Dragistin Valev is the 2D supervisor on RRR, and he works for an animation company called Redefine, which is a subsidiary of a visual effects studio called DNEG, Double Negative Visual Effects.
Now, those guys I've heard of.
They're based out of the UK. They've won 6 Oscars. They've been around since 1998. And if my co-hosts Adam and Bruce are listening right now, this is a question for them. You know how from time to time we watch a movie and we ask the question, how did this movie only cost $15 million to make? And I'm specifically thinking about the Russian Avengers here. Well, DNEG has a statement on their website that speaks to modern slavery and something called the Modern Slavery Act of 2015. On their website, they state that during the fiscal year of 2019, there were no reports of slavery throughout the company.
Well.
This brings up a few questions. Question number 1, why is the last year this claim was made from 3 years ago? Question number 2, does this mean that DNEG has a past of breaking the Modern Slavery Act of 2015? And number 3, why did it take 2015 to pass something called the Modern Slavery Act of 2015? Now, to give you some perspective on 2015, the sequel Star Wars movies came out that same year. That's not a long time ago. That's the galaxy far, far away. Basically, what I'm trying to say, Mr. Stallone, is that I hope that Dragistin Valev is okay. And I hope he was okay when he worked as the compositing supervisor on your movie, Rambo Last Blood. I don't know how much compositing was necessary for that movie, but it feels like there was probably a lot. I watched that movie, but the only thing I could tell you about it is that you have a bunch of underground tunnels that you made under your house for some reason, and it's implied that you made them by yourself in secret.
Yeah.
And anyway, I hope that the people who were responsible for the visual effects in that movie and in this movie treated like Dragistin Valev like a human being, which isn't too much to ask for. I have a special attachment to Dragistin because there are well over 1,000 people who worked on RRR, and he is literally the only person who was connected one-to-one with you and your work on this film. And I know that because I looked. I'll talk to you again real soon. Hope to hear from you. My pal, your pal, Sweet Chauncey from the internet.
Hey, if you can't be your own friend, whose friend can you be?
I screwed that part up.
It's okay. We've been doing it for 8 years. It's bound to have 1 or 2 of them in there. That's okay. Not because now, if Bruce or I ever messed up, it'd be a different story. But you know how it is. Okay, where does RRR fall on the official Robin rating system for you, Bruce?
It's a really good movie, but it's not perfect. And I'll say the way that people reacted, I expected just a little more of something somewhere. Also, you know, I've got the sensibilities I've got, and I've been trained to watch the media I've been trained to watch. So I did have to take a break about 2 hours into it and then come back and finish it. So I felt more like I binge watched a season of something on Netflix than watched a movie. And it's actually kind of broken up in episodic points where you could have made this a 6-episode series. So I'm going to give it Tim Drake. And some people are probably going to say, what? This doesn't get the top. But I think some people are just caught up in they had low expectations and this was a lot of fun. I had high expectations. It met them. It didn't surpass them. It did make me curious because I think there's other stuff by these same filmmakers that is actually more up our alley than this movie.
Well, fair enough. Sean, what do you got?
For me, this is a high Tim Drake. I really enjoy this movie. I think that it is the 3-hour running time is a lot to ask.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, there's parts in this movie where I found myself, you know, checking my phone. But my word, I love this movie. So for me, it's a high Tim Drake.
Yeah, Tim Drake as well. It is. It's a lot of fun. You're right. The 3-hour runtime is the biggest. Like even if it like 2.5 to 2.5 would have been fine. And I think there is, you know, some fat to trim on this that could, you know, get things pumping a little bit better, but we've got what we've got, and it's fine. It's a lot more fun than I expected. It was, again, a lot. What's the word I'm looking for? It was just a higher quality than I guess I expected. I was really, really surprised. I was just like, wow, these special effects are really good. The camera work's really good. The fighting sequences are just fantastically well done. It's just a lot of fun. And Netflix is a nice way to do it because, like you said, you could do some pausing in between the myriad of acts and stuff that literally fade to black and everything. So you could just pause it, go do your stuff, and come back, and it'll still be waiting for you.
We do have HMPers saying this might be their favorite movie ever, and I think that's just being caught up in some exhilaration.
You can like a movie. That's great. I'm glad that people are like, this is my favorite movie of all time. I still feel that way about Spider-Man, by the way, No Way Home. Yeah. I still think that's my favorite superhero movie of all time.
See, and my favorite movie of all time is Dream a Little Dream, so I shouldn't be throwing stones.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Keep your mouth shut, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Okay, so that is it, everybody. Another episode in the books here. We're going to talk about what we're doing in next week in just a moment. In the meantime, Bruce, where we can find more of your work on the internet.
I'm hoping to show up on the Film Find because we've had something in the works that 2 bouts of COVID can't stop. We'll do it eventually. And I got time now, so hoping to do that soon.
Indeed. Sean, what else?
We finished out the podcast of Obi-Wan Kenobi to mixed results. Yeah. But check that out. We had a lot to say this week, which I was surprised by. And check it out.
It's a show that was on. We watched it and we talked about it. And you can listen to us do so.
Everything he just said is true.
Available now wherever fighter podcasts are delivered to probably your phone, more than likely, if you're the majority of people out there.
Your Sony Walkman cassette tape deck.
I tell you, okay, all right, that's a whole nother conversation where I'm like, we could put podcasts on tapes. Anyways, next week, everybody, we're going to be, I think Bruce may be out for us, but Sean and I are going to take a look at a couple episodes of The Umbrella Academy. Season 3 is out. That is on Netflix right now as well. So my guess is check some of those out. I don't know how many there are. We'll pick a couple.
Yeah, let's say 2.
All right, we'll do 2 and see if we want to do the rest of this thing. So Sean and I will come back.
I think season 3 has 42 episodes, so you should watch half.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, I guess we'll just see you back here next week when we all die. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking Umbrella Academy Season 3 for Sweet Sean's a Go Back from the Internet. Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. Stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. Gonna stand my ground, won't be turned around, and I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. I won't back down. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know
I won't back down. I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. I won't back down. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. No, I won't.